Mark Gensel is absent. Also in attendance are the superintendent and administrative cabinet.
We have 7. Mike Talley's also absent.
You're right, I have 7. At this time, please join me in the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will now elect a temporary chairperson for the purpose of reorganization tonight.
I nominate Diane Martin as temporary chairperson for the purpose of reorganization.
Are there any other nominations? If none, and if there are no objections, I declare the nominations closed by unanimous consent. All those in favor of electing Diane Martin as temporary chairperson for the purpose of reorganization, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
All right, can I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved. Second.
All right, any questions? If none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the agenda is approved. A report from the nominating team has previously been accepted, and those slated are for President Idette Groff, for Vice President Mark Gensel. Are there any other nominations? Okay, if there are none, and if there are no objections, I declare the nominations closed by unanimous consent. I call for a motion to elect the slate as presented. I need a motion for that.
I move that we elect Idette Groff as school board president and Mark Gensel as vice president.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Having been duly elected the officers of this board for 2022-2023 are President Idette Groff, Vice President Mark Gensel. It's a unanimous vote, so congratulations Idette and Mark.
I'm going to pick up where I usually would at this point. This is one of 2 meetings per month in which you receive most of the information presentations as well as discuss and deliberate future decisions. Due to the requirements of the organizational regulations, there is also a consent agenda at this time. There are also some action voting items which might be required on timely issues or to meet time restrained deadlines. Our meetings observe the requirements of the school code, legislative directives, original Act 84 Sunshine Law, all subsequent amendments, judicial rulings, and our district policies to the best of our understanding and ability. All agenda and related public documents and details are posted on the district website. That much said, we will get on with board comments. Am I right?
Membership list.
Oh, the membership list, that should have been announced. The membership list has been posted for everyone's information. Okay, then we'll get on with board comments. Are there any comments from the board members on district activities? This is the first point in the meeting where we can have public comments related to agenda items. Is there any public comments? No. We have a list of items on the consent agenda this time. They're all part of the requirements of the organizational rules. I would entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
I move we accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments about it? I would bring up one thing. Under E with dates, that does not include the board retreats, and we will go over that in an information session. And I have put in front of you the new PSBA Principles for Governance and Leadership. They're similar to the others. They've moved some things around, they've reworded them. But nonetheless, I think at least once a year, it does us all well to stop and read through them, just to remind ourselves. That much said, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Wait a second, we have to do a roll call for this. Yeah, the contracts, I'm sorry, we will need a roll call vote.
Mr. Benigno?
Aye.
Mr. Dillman?
Aye.
Mrs. Kapka?
Aye.
Mr. Hurst.
Aye.
Dr. Martin.
Aye.
Ms. Trowbridge,
Aye.
and Mrs. Groff.
Aye. And the vote is 7-0. So the consent agenda passes. We can now take a look at the list that you have of board assignments. It's a little different from last year. There are some of the previous district committees that are being reworked, reinvigorated. So we'll just go down and if you're willing to stay where you are, just say yes and we'll move on. If not, we'll see if we can find someone else. Act 48, Dr. Martin.
Yes.
Okay. Buckskin Activities Alliance. I have Mr. Benigno and Mr. Talley.
Yes, that should be
Okay.
Mr. Talley as well, yes.
Yeah, I'll make sure with him. CTC Board, Mr. Hurst.
Yeah.
Will you stay there? The Conestoga Valley Education Foundation, Mr. Gensel is going to stand in my stead because they have them on Friday morning. Construction Team, Mr. Dillman, Mr. Gensel, Mr. Hurst.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You're willing to keep doing that, good for you. Corporate Sponsorship, that would be
Just
Mr.
rely on
Talley.
Brad.
I will skip the one for Mr. Gensel isn't there. The district communication plan, originally, that included Mrs. Trowbridge. Is that being reconfigured or should we leave that there?
Well, we still have it, so I would keep it there,
Okay, that would be Mrs. Trowbridge.
but it's not, we're not meeting regularly yet right now because we just finished the plan last year. But we'll be able to take another look at it.
District Safety Committee, Mr. Talley and Mrs. Kapka. You're still good? District Wellness Committee, Mrs. Kapka and Mrs. Hunsinger.
Yes.
Okay. District, we'll just skip that one. I'm on the IU board. Has anyone checked with Mr. Maines or does he not have to be reappointed every year? I don't know how that works.
We'll check with him and see if he still wants to be on.
Okay.
I didn't know if you wanted somebody else.
No, I'm perfect.
You're okay with him?
Yeah, and we've always used a past board member for that. We've been lucky to have someone willing to do it.
Mhm.
I am doing Lancaster County Academy, Lancaster County Tax Collection Bureau, Mrs. Hunsinger. I do PSBA, Title I Parent Advisory, Dr. Martin.
Mhm.
And for right now, I am doing the regional rec plan. And with policy review, the only one I'm going to make sure of on this one is Mr. Gensel, and I'll explain that when we have a review of board activities for the year.
I have a question. Is the equity committee supposed to be on this list or is that like
There
something
were
else?
two that are not there because they're being reconfigured
Understood.
as under new programs.
Got it.
Okay, that and the Drug and Alcohol Task Force have both been rethought,
Yeah, we definitely have you on that,
yeah.
Okay,
and,
super. I just wanted to.
reconstituted.
Are we going to put that on the consent agenda for next week?
We will.
I think that's the best way to do that. The other thing we have is a policy review.
Yes, Madam President, I met with Mark Gensel and Tom Richards from CVEA, and we went over the 4 policies listed, 13, 14, 416, and 417. We're recommending deletion of 413 and 416 because they are both found within 404. Obviously, employment application, you have to apply to get a job. And we do check references.
Great.
So that is both in 404. The evaluation of the employees, I'm gonna take a look there. What we did is, I don't wanna say we're getting ahead of ourselves, but we're being proactive in that we are looking at the PSBA policy that Manheim Township and 2 other districts around us have both adopted. We're gonna adopt that. It has everything in it that we've crossed off, but got rid of some of the things that should not have been there.
Unnecessary
Yes,
detail, yeah.
should not have been there. So you'll see the new policy in green. So everything that's in black crossed out that's critical, we have put in the green.
Unfortunately, I didn't get my internet until late this afternoon. There was that one part that I asked to put back in?
That is on the next
Oh,
policy.
that's on the next one, okay. I don't know which numbers are which is where I got lost before, okay?
And then the assignment of transfers, we went over that one, and what we did is we really liked the way that Penn Manor, Lampier Strasburg used theirs, because they listed some of the reasons to consider, that an administrator would consider when moving teachers around. And that was the only school district we found that had it, and we really liked it. Again, the CVEA rep was fully supportive as well.
May I ask, is there a reason why that shows up here and not in guidelines for administrators?
As an administrative reg,
Yeah, to me, it's a management issue.
it is.
And I appreciate, especially if the union agrees, with how we handle these situations, which, policy gives it a little more oomph, but I take that back. Policy does not give it more oomph. If it's an administrative regulation, it carries the same weight as policy.
It's how we implement the policy.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if anyone feels that should be in policy, that's fine, but that's sort of a step away from us. Save yourself that trouble.
Okay, we will delete those. The superintendent may 1 through 9. That's listed on the,
And that's distributed anyhow, those guidelines, aren't they? So everyone knows that's how it's being done.
and then policy 404 is the one that we had passed but overlooked the sentence that we talked in that took the board out of the interview process for cabinet and building level principals. So we have added that and a delegation of responsibility in that first paragraph. The superintendent shall ensure that the hiring process of specific administrators, cabinet level administrators, and building principals include the opportunity for the school board to be part of the interview process. And then
That's not quite the way it was worded before. Before it specified that we interview. I think there's a very different tone when it says the superintendent will make sure we're involved. I liked it before when it said we did an interview. I have no problem with changing the level and who we interview, but to me, there's a huge difference between we interview and the superintendent will see that we're involved. I think that's too loose for my taste. I don't know how anyone else feels, that's just me.
I see what you're saying.
Excuse me?
I understand what you're saying. So for this right now, we would be doing an interview.
it says include the opportunity for the school board to be part of the interview process.
Yeah, that's
Right.
different than doing
Being
an
part
interview.
of the interview process,
Process is
like we're
different.
not running. It just says like, oh, okay, you have a board, even a rep, just
Yeah.
there
Well,
being part of
I
it.
And the way I looked at it, the interview process is simply not a single interview. It's a first round interview, it's a second round interview, it's a third round interview. That's the interview process, with the board being the last interview of the interview process.
I'd rather it said that, because what it says here is as long as we're involved somewhere, we're abiding, just the wording, I think what it implies is different than what we mean.
Right, just further define the interview
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
Just stick with
It's
that.
saying that we have the opportunity, it doesn't say that we will be doing something.
Yeah,
what that
it said that we would do
opportunity
that last interview.
Is that,
I can
To,
I can go with that.
in
There's
a
a
final
difference.
round interview or something like that.
absolutely,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, something like that.
That sounds better.
Give other,
Let's put it in a final round interview
However
at the
it was,
end.
however it was worded in the last one.
Okay.
Okay, just look that up. I think it'll be
Well, I
fine.
think
Except the last one, here's where you want some ability for the administration to work with the board.
Well, we're not cutting everyone else out when we do that last interview.
No, I'm just saying that there's times where we don't have 3, we have 2, we don't have 2, we have 1. But that's a discussion that we have
Yeah, and we-
prior to.
And we can waive that if we like. There's always that ability. Well, what we also cut out was there used to be a line that required you to bring us 3.
Mhm.
At least 2, maybe 3, and we got rid of that.
We got rid of all of it.
Yeah, I mean, that was no longer really practicable.
Right. Would say like if possible, preferred 3 candidates or something.
I think that's what it said
Yeah,
last time.
it said if
Right.
possible 3,
If not two.
or it said
At least
at
2.
Something along those lines.
preferably 3, yeah. None of that works in today's environment. So I have no problem with dropping that.
All right, then I'll just add then, to be part of the interview process as the final interview, or something to that.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
line, okay.
However it was before.
What
We'll put that
about,
in.
Yeah.
what about the part where the board member kind of sat as like just a fly on the wall during the interview process?
That wasn't policy, that was,
I didn't know if we wanted to look at that or.
I don't
nix it.
think you wanna force that into policy. I think, at least for me, I'm comfortable with,
That-
precedent.
So what we're doing now currently.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, that's,
yeah.
that was Diane's idea.
And really, that was done because at some place, we used to have 1 or 2 of the people involved in the early interviews sit in on that last one and give us that feedback, and basically we replaced that with one of our own, which I think is good.
So let me get, so what you're saying, Diane, is you're saying what we're doing now, the school director is in the first round of interviews. You-
Yeah, at
you would
some
like to
point in
keep-
there.
Yeah, but he's
whether-
only an observer.
Correct.
Right, just
Correct.
not
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's, I was
Like
just clarifying
the
what you're
fly on
saying.
the
Yeah.
wall.
Okay.
Whether
Yeah.
just-
I don't know, do you feel that really needs to be in policy, or you're comfortable with the
No,
way
I
it is?
just, we do it the way it is now, as long as
Okay.
that's included, that's fine.
All right,
And it didn't happen that way with Jerry. You weren't there.
No.
Sometimes you were there with me, sometimes you weren't there with me. You're gonna have a new superintendent, you're gonna have to work it out with him or her.
Correct.
To figure out what works best for
well, I
for
think,
that leader.
as I mentioned once before, I'm hoping we will have an orientation session with the new superintendent. So this is something, if you're keeping a list of things you wanna talk to him about, or things you wanna make sure he understands what our expectation is, that should be on your list. Because that meeting, as far as I'm concerned, will take place. I think it's important we do that.
I agree 100%.
Okay?
Thanks, Dave.
Is that it?
Yes, ma'am, that's just for policy.
Dave, I'm sorry, I have a question back on four
I'm
fourteen.
sorry. Yes,
Sorry. I apologize, I didn't compare all the strike-throughs to the new. Can you just confirm that the frequency of the evaluations, scope of the evaluations, and the rating scale all
Yeah,
remains
And
unchanged?
it's school code for professional employees. Non-tenured employees are evaluated twice a year. Administrators are evaluated once a year. Tenured teachers once a year, and support staff once a year.
And that's all unchanged?
That's all, that's in the administrative regulations.
Yeah, the only thing that's out of that, and this is, it seems to change every few years, and I don't know if the board would ever be interested in actually seeing what that instrument looks like.
We can definitely share it with you,
We
how
do,
often people get
it's
evaluated.
changed probably half a dozen times that I know for both administrators and the other, but in as much as we don't get to do it, same kind, it's often interesting to see just how the administration handles
The form-
evaluation.
The forms have really changed more than anything
Yeah.
from PDE that are sent down.
They used to have like 3 different methods for the teachers to get their evaluation.
We're still working on that differentiated supervision plan.
Yeah,
And
Yeah,
they made a
I
lot of progress at the last meeting Jill
yeah,
ran.
well, I think at some point it would be interesting for the board to understand and to appreciate what's expected of our teachers, not that we get involved in doing it.
Yeah, so the timing's perfect. We've been meeting with a work group this year to revise the evaluation plan for teachers based on the new Act 13. So last school year, the state updated their code. It was Act 82, now it's Act 13. So we put together a work group of teacher leaders in the district, and we've been meeting to update that document and create a new plan. And so actually that is on our agenda. It'll be spring.
No,
We
that's
meet in
fine.
January and February, but we
Yeah.
all agreed, we wanted the board to understand the direction because it's a shift. It's another shift that really lines up with the profile of the CV learner, with a lot of the comprehensive plan goals that we put in place. So that was definitely a discussion at our last meeting, is some of the teachers that actually said, hey, is the school board gonna know that this is the direction we're going? Because it's very different than the boilerplate template that a lot of other districts have just taken on. So we would be very, very happy to share that.
I love it when we think of something and you're already doing it. And I think the same is true for how administrators are evaluated, because we interview them. And that's a big part of the job. I think understanding what's being looked at is important part of that process. So we'll get that
Dave,
done.
I apologize again, and I'm willfully gonna display my ignorance, which is always a bad idea. But,
Join the club.
yeah, if the performance review process is covered by code, school code, then what does this
Teachers.
distinguish? Do you understand my question?
I think you said the difference between
If it's in school
what they
code, why do we
require
have a
and what we
policy?
do.
Yes,
Because it's not just professional employees.
okay,
It also deals with support and administrators.
this,
So, let's see,
Now, can I assume it's a difference between what the law requires and the detail of what we put in ours? Say for teachers, I mean, does the law actually give an exact evaluation form? Or
Oh, yeah, very, very prescriptive.
And can we expand on that?
We can expand on the process to get to the ratings, but we cannot change any of the sections that need to be evaluated or rated within that form. But ours is the process to how we get to determining those ratings.
Okay. I keep thinking, I'm sure a lot of schools have specific things that they expect. I mean, how do you individualize that for your district and your culture?
Well, one example is the differentiated supervision plan that's in there. The law says tenured teachers need to have the option to be on a differentiated plan. So every 4 years, they get one formal observation, but then 3 years, they get to choose from a menu of other options. That menu is a local decision.
Okay.
So we can decide what's on that menu. There is language in the law around 3 models. That's what most districts have just picked up and done. And I said there's kind of like, they just took those 3, great, here it is. Our teacher work group is actually coming up with choices for that menu that I haven't seen anywhere in the state yet. So it's really exciting the work they're doing. But that's the example. The rating form at the end will be the same as every other educator in the state. Our menu of options is customized based on our learning community here in CV.
And are there teachers as well as administrators working on that?
There are.
So this is what teachers expect of themselves and their coworkers.
Yep.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it's been some some of the best conversations have been with this work group. It's a great group that's come together to work on
So,
this.
and the teacher doesn't like it, will have to look at their coworkers.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
going back to like what the board policy does, the purpose for board policy is to enforce school code.
Good.
So sometimes it does restate what's in school code, because you'll see that the numbers that are at the end, when you click on it, it's almost word for word for some components of school code, it's just pulled down. So what this does is highlights for faculty and staff, we have to follow these policies, and the reason we're following the policies is because they're in school code.
Got it.
So there is some redundancy.
And it also may seem as if we're not being consistent, but there are some things in the school code or in law that the law was passed and said, and you must put this in your policy. So sometimes we end up not putting something in policy because it's in code, or we just refer to it, and other times we write it out. And that's often because the people that wrote the laws didn't understand what it meant to say, put it in your policy. So, questions?
thanks for indulging my ignorance.
No, I hope that explained it, okay.
I think we all learned from your questions. Also now posted then is the December 12th agenda. Are there any questions on that?
No, ma'am.
This is a second opportunity for the public to address the board. Would anyone like to talk to us, please? No? Okay. Board initiatives and concerns. I'll just mention one very, very quickly, and we'll go over this, because it's only information the board would care about, but I'm looking at redefining the job of vice president. I think you have learned that we increased it a little bit, but I'm gonna
There
try
could
to
be some
put,
more.
gonna try to put some more meat on the bone, and I would appreciate your input on that too.
Yes, ma'am.
If there, remind everyone that tomorrow morning is the senior breakfast, for all of you who can make it. It might be cold, but we're not gonna be going through the snow to get in here. If there are none others, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session for legal and personnel reasons.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays?
I didn't think so.
I dare anybody.